Welcome to Morningstar Videos.
This subject said, vaccine discrimination. Can you offer some soothing words? Your weekly broadcasts have provided so much clarity, and I appreciate knowing that I must do me, and I feel the best I can, and it's mostly pretty easy to feel love and joy and smile and be happy. But Abraham, what's going on with the vaccination? There are no words without going to the lowest end of the emotional scale. For those of us who've made the decision to not take the vaccination, it's troubling that freedoms are being taken away. I know everyone gets to decide for themselves to take it or not take it, and I've made my decision not to take it based upon what feels best for me. The very thought of having the vaccine brings my feelings to the lowest part of the emotional scale. The choice to not vaccinate has not been easy. Start again. The choice to not vaccinate has been easy because it feels good to be in charge of my own body. But I also feel, this is the not easy part, that's a huge step one moment in the history of mankind. People's freedoms are slipping away. Can you offer any insights? So your conclusion, first of all, we applaud you in your decision, and we think it's wonderful to stick to your guns, and we're not trying to get you to take the vaccination. Esther took it with happiness, but we don't tell you that because we think you should. We don't think you should, feeling the way you're feeling. We don't think you should do anything that feels like you're describing. We want to put some of this in perspective, however, not because we're encouraging you to ever do anything, but in order to understand, you know what we were talking about earlier? I'm going to go a little over time here, get ready. You know what we were talking about earlier, about this mix, this blend of contrast and what it produces in you, and the new that it gives birth to, and then you're coming into alignment with it, because as eternal beings there's constant evolution. And so now don't misunderstand, we're not trying to get you to take the vaccination. Understand that most of all in this conversation. But there is something rich in here that your question just happens to uncover, that we want you to consider softly. Some years ago, some of you aren't old enough to remember, but Esther remembers it well. The law about seatbelts happened, and Esther felt about it the way you feel. She and Jerry didn't wear their seatbelts. They found a way to avoid it, buckled them into themselves and sat on them for a while. Jerry even cut them out of one of the cars. Then he discovered a contraption where he could hold it apart. Eventually, the attention on that softened. They just didn't find it to be the limitation to their freedom that they had once decided that it was. It faded into the background as a non-issue. Now, we're not saying let people take your freedom and cope with it. We're saying that what binds you is resistance, and pushing against is the greatest thing of that. Now, we know you're fighting with us in your mind, some of you with your words. Don't throw heavy things. We get why this is hard to hear, but stay with us just for a little bit. Esther got so she leaned into her seatbelt, especially when she got her Audi R8. She buckled up and tightened it and drove fast and enjoyed the control that she was able to maintain in her car, because the inertia of the car was moving her about, and the seatbelt held her in a practical place in relationship to the controls of the car. Esther remembers after 9/11, she was flying a lot, 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week. And suddenly, if they wanted to fly, they were required to take off their shoes. Ugh. And it was particularly difficult for them because they were going to do seminars and they had bags full of electronics. And the electronics all had to be taken out of the bags and examined. Esther had just purchased the most beautiful jar of face cream that she had ever had in her life, and they took it away from her. It was too many ounces of something unknown to them, and they threw it in a big barrel with hundreds of other items that they'd confiscated from other people. And Esther felt that rage that you are describing, that feeling of being out of control of her own life. Now, this is where the merging with intentions comes in. They wanted to get on an airplane because they wanted to be where you are. And being where you are was top half of the scale. They wanted to get on an airplane because they wanted to travel efficiently. And getting there fast was top half of the scale. And so what kept happening is, in each situation, there were more top half of the scale things than bottom half of the scale things. One point, Esther was carrying some scissors. Jerry called them scissors to tease Kate when she was little. Pretended like he didn't know how to say it. And he knew Esther always had them in her purse. They folded into themselves so that the pointy part wasn't there, and Esther could pull them apart and go like this, and now they were scissors that worked. And so Jerry frequently would say to Esther, especially if Kate was around, "May I borrow your scissors, please?" And it would make Kate laugh, and she would correct him, and he would try to say it again, and she would correct him. It was a very fun game they played. So after Jerry made his transition, Esther has her scissors in her carry-on bag, and the TSA people took them, were going to confiscate them. And Esther said, "Oh, you cannot take them. I will find another way. I will check this bag." Oh, but checking this bag was not pleasing to her. It had other electronics that felt precious. It had money in it. It had jewelry in it. It had things that she worried about from the lower half of the scale. You might break my computer. You might steal my money. You might steal my jewelry. But from the upper half of the scale, I love these scissors and I want to keep them with me. And the path of least resistance is to put them in the bag and let you put it underneath the airplane. Because I want these scissors in my life, because they are meaningful to me, because they are precious to me, because Jerry and Kate had so much fun with them. The other day, after months of not laying eyes on those scissors, Esther was in San Antonio and opened a drawer, and there they were. And she picked them up and she said, "There you are." She didn't say, "I missed you." She just appreciated them, upper half of the scale. We are not saying to you that you can give away your freedoms and like it. We're saying to you that you are giving away your freedoms in ways you don't even know. Every time you push against anything, you give away the freedom of alignment with who you are. This isn't about what you do or don't do. As Esther was considering some of this, one of her favorite things these days is to watch basketball. She bees there in the arena as much as she can be. During the pandemic, there was no basketball. Her seat and everyone else's sat empty for a long while. Her team and so many others found a way, a path of least resistance. They went to a bubble. She noticed that they were vaccinated. They went to the bubble. These men that she regards as those who care most about their physical apparatus, those who eat well and think well and thrive, she saw them figure out a way to do what they do differently than they'd done it before, as millions of you are doing, as you are now flying with those TSA restrictions still in place after 20 years because something happened and someone made a decision that happened and therefore we will do this. We get it that you can call this some lack of freedom. But there is so much more evolution and expansion in the decisions that you are making. And so all that we're encouraging you is that you take you line up with taking it and take it, or you line up with not taking it and don't take it. But don't decide not to take it and push against. And don't decide to take it and push against. Because it's the pushing against that takes your freedom and your well-being and your joy. Well, that was a big one.